The following video is part 2 of a series of videos in which I will be attempting to analyze the game off, specifically the writing of the game, the general story, the characters, etc. If you have not seen part 1, then I would strongly recommend viewing it before continuing with this video. It will be linked down below in the description. On initial entry into Zone 2, it immediately seems a lot more welcoming than Zone 1 was. For one, it's completely devoid of any rain, and for two, it has a vibrant pink landscape instead of the dull green. Pretty much the entirety of the zone is taken up by the residential area known as Bismarck, and at Bismarck's center lies the library, which towers far, far above the rest of the zone. Inside the library, the receptionist is talking to another Elson about a man whom they believe they should stop lending books to because he keeps ripping out the pages. Notably, the Elson in Bismarck seem a lot more afraid of things than the Elson in Zone 1 were. The receptionist also mentions about specters being upstairs, and of course, as usual, the batter says that he'll be the one to eliminate them. The receptionist initially denies this request, saying it might be dangerous, but the batter persists. There's mention of a cat being upstairs, which might bring to mind the judge, but we'll soon see that this is definitely not the judge. Upstairs on the 3rd floor, there's a puzzle that involves having to restore pages to a bunch of books that are missing them. What these books actually say in the pages is nearly impossible to make out at a glance. However, thankfully, the Off Fandom Wiki, huge shout out to them, actually transcribed what the books say. Here's what they say. This is the story of the 3 guardians, chosen by the Queen to rule over the zones, islets of life in the nothingness of this world. The first, Deaden, was tall and short of temper. His firmness of character and his body of steel ensured him supreme reign over his zone. The second, Japhet, was kind and generous. Always smiling benignantly, he was beloved by all. He always went off in all directions, never ceasing to give more security to his subjects. The third, Enoch, was cold and just. He produced a 5th artificial element to his own, sugar. His people became addicted to this magical substance. They were happy, but disconnected from reality. Arcane legends tell of the Queen living by her father's side in the room, engendering the phantoms to destroy the world that they themselves have created. Some say that she is beautiful like the heart of the sun, others are certain that she is invisible. All of this is, evidently, nothing but unfounded speculation. With that, we now have an actual idea of what a guardian really is. A ruler of their respective zone. In addition, we now have a name to give to the Guardian of Zone 2, Japhet, who we have yet to meet. This is also the first mention of the Queen's father, who, as we'll later find out, is also connected to the batter in a very significant way. This also implies that the Queen is the one responsible for all the destruction we're seeing, but this remains dicey at best. Either way though, it clearly puts a target on her head for the batter. As already mentioned, 3 of the required pages are on this floor, however there's one that's actually outside of the library that you have to talk to another Elson to get. This took me so long to figure out, it's actually kind of embarrassing. Now that we've solved that puzzle, we can actually go upstairs even more and meet the cat that was mentioned by the receptionist earlier. So the battle against Japhet, the Guardian of Zone 2, already begins. Interestingly, Japhet's whole demeanor seems to contradict what was written about him completely. Instead of being kind-hearted and smiling, he's angry and vengeful, and insults the batter, referring to him as just a ridiculous puppet in baseball pants. His choice of the word puppet, though, reflects that he seems to be at least somewhat aware of the true nature of the batter as our puppet. It's also revealed that Japhet is the one leading all of the Spectres. This runs completely counter to the job of a Guardian. The Guardians of the Zones are supposed to protect their zones and keep them operating. Japhet, though, seems to be interested in the complete opposite of that. He's commanding the Spectres to destroy Zone 2. Notably, the battle music has been altered as well. It's much more frantic and disjointed sounding. It's not to the point where it's completely unrecognizable or anything, but just enough to tip you off that something's wrong here. This fits very well for Zone 2 especially, given that, well, we're probably questioning why we had to kill Deaden in the first place. Deaden, even though he was pretty much a jerk to everybody, wasn't in charge of the Spectres or anything like that. So why did we kill him? Was this really part of our mission? What's going on here? Believe me, these questions are gonna keep repeating throughout the rest of the game, and it'll only get more and more intense from here. Eventually, we do end up winning the fight because we've already cleared out all the phantoms, therefore they can't come to the aid of Japhet when he calls them. However, Japhet's defeat is only temporary, and after that we get add-on Omega, the second add-on we get. The title given to Omega in the status menu is, quote, the Sun, and it's a bit less reliable than Add-on Alpha. Unlike Add-on Alpha, it specializes in mostly randomized competences, whether it be randomizing the type of damage inflicted or the amount of damage inflicted. So basically, it's like a gamble every time you decide to use one of its competences, making it a bit less reliable, but still really useful if you get lucky. Outside the entrance to the library, we once again come face to face with none other than the Judge. The Judge informs us that the shopping mall north of the library actually has fallen to ectoplasmic entities as well and other specters, and so that becomes our next destination. Only a single Elson remains outside of the shopping mall who says that it's full of specters and that, quote, it's terribly frightening. Inside the shopping mall, we also come face to face once again with our favorite fourth wall breaking merchant, Zachary. The Judge also wasn't kidding when he said there was a problem in this place with ectoplasmic entities because the mall is absolutely infested with enemies. The layout is also really confusing and convoluted, being almost labyrinth-like in its design. Across the mall, we can also find advertisements for a lot of different products, most of which being goods produced back in Zone 1. Additionally, a lot of the advertisements seem to be geared towards safety in a lot of ways. This even further emphasizes just how paranoid a lot of the residents of Bismarck really are. This further emphasizes the idea as well of just how dystopian the world of Off really is. Except unlike in Zone 1 where everybody seemed apathetic and depressed about everything, all of the people in Zone 2 seem constantly anxious and on edge. Zone 2 is an interesting contrast between Zone 1 when it comes to industry too. While Zone 1 showed the consequences of it from the workers' perspective, Zone 2 instead shows the consequences of industry through the perspective of the consumers. They're fully reliant on Zone 1 and their malls are overflowing with even the most basic of goods needed. And in addition, all of the people have become afraid of everything, making them further rely on the goods from the mall in order to protect themselves. I will admit, though, that maybe this is one of the things that I'm thinking a little bit too much on, and I don't really have much to support my assertion here. So, out of all the things, I will admit I could be very wrong about this. Feel free to let me know in the comments. Eventually, further into the maze, we can actually find the Judge again, who drew his own advertisement, which just looks absolutely adorable. I'm sorry, this is one of the very few wholesome moments in the game, and just look at him! Sorry, I have a huge soft spot for cats. I'm a proud cat parent, okay? The Judge informs us that his brother Valerie has been apparently living in this zone for many years, and the only character we've come across that bears any resemblance to the Judge is Japhet. Huh. In any event, we end up going to the next area of Zone 2. The carnival. Outside of the carnival, there's a lot of signs in the line area that humorously point out how long the wait will be despite how short it seems. Everybody just kinda stands around in the main central part of the park, not really wanting to go on any rides. Speaking of attractions though, there's only 3 here. One of them is a pedalo course where you can ride a little boat around some water. There's a director's office nearby, but you can't access it. This boat ride is an actual interactive attraction where you are basically in full control, and it's a nice little area. You just have to be careful about the tiny blue squares because those are motor things that send you in a direction automatically. It's a nice little bit of level design, not too shabby. However, it's also required to activate a switch to unlock part of another attraction, the roller coaster. The actual current roller coaster is literally just a bunch of stationary chairs situated overlooking the liquid plastic. And even this proves to be too much for a lot of Elson who say they feel like they're going to faint. Although humorous, this does further emphasize just how bad the whole problem with fear has gotten in Bismarck. For God's sake, the people think that a bunch of chairs situated facing the ocean is a roller coaster and they think it's, quote, too daredevilish for them. If that doesn't show just how bad their fear has gotten, I don't know what else will. If you've managed to unlock the real roller coaster, you'll be able to go up to the top of it where you get a rare view of the actual sky and the clouds, which is really appreciated. Weirdly, there's a statue of Zachary up here, and there's a brief little puzzle where you have to push the statue into the roller coaster cart. If you then get the batter to ride down the roller coaster with this statue, you'll then get a picture of them together, which can be used to access the boss's office. This shows that Zachary is in charge of this amusement park, though how involved he actually is up for questions. This entire thing is entirely optional, but you do get a lot of really good items if you access the boss's office, so I definitely recommend doing it. The last attraction is also the only one that's actually required to beat the zone, the balloon popping minigame. You and an Elson take turns together popping a different amount of balloons of your choosing. Whoever pops the last remaining balloon loses the game. Admittedly, the AI can be a little bit finicky at times, but overall it's not a huge deal, and I usually get it within a few attempts. When you eventually win, the Elson is completely baffled and admits to cheating the entire time before accusing the batter of doing the same, and then a fight begins. The Elson goes down really quickly, and overall it's not really that bad. The only reward you get for this is a tie, however this is more important than it looks at first glance. Wearing this tie grants you access to the easternmost part of the entire zone, the residential area. Here we meet Japhet once again, except this time we're not the only one who knows of his existence. We now have specters to destroy within 4 minutes or else we'll automatically get a game over. These specters are significantly more difficult to deal with than the ones previously, especially the Spectermite swarms. They're a lot faster and more aggressive than other enemies we've faced up to this point. It's here too that we finally understand why it is that Japhet is so angry with everybody, why he's so vengeful. It's not because he's innately evil, it's because of the treatment he gets from his subjects. He's the one who built this zone, he gave them everything, and in return, they don't even recognize him. Even worse, they all suggest he's dangerous and just see him as some old cat. So it's little wonder then why Japhet feels so angry and bitter. However, he then decides to overcorrect for everything. He releases a punishment too far by descending a bunch of lethal specters upon the people. This makes it so Japhet is actually a threat that needs to be taken out, because unlike Deaden, who was just kind of a jerk to everybody, Japhet is actively harming his own people. This makes Japhet perhaps the only Guardian in the entire game where we can actively see why the Batter is pursuing him. Not only is he in charge of the Spectres, but he's actively using them to terrorize his own people as vengeance. And ultimately, we and the Batter are the purifiers of this world. And even if that means eliminating a Guardian, if that Guardian is in charge of the Spectres, then maybe it's what has to be done. By this point, Japhet cannot be reasoned with anymore. Having said that though, that does not absolve the Batter at all of just how wrong some of his actions feel. Ever since defeating Deaden 2 and seeing his corpse, it starts raising questions as to what the nature of this purification really is. Are we really doing the right thing on this mission? There have been several points where Elson have shown up as monsters in the battle menu, but once again, as I mentioned before, they appear completely normal in the overworld. Are the Spectres even as monstrous as they appear to the Batter as they actually are? All of these are questions for a later point, though. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. The ungrateful treatment from all the townspeople doesn't end with Japhet, though, because even after the Batter finishes purifying the residential area of all the Spectres, the people return the kindness by kicking him out of the residential area for quote-unquote causing a disturbance. Upon being thrown out, the judge greets us and then informs us that apparently this Japhet individual is actually his brother Valerie going under a different name and pretending to be someone else. This could be possible at this point, but is it really? Does Japhet just happen to look similar to Valerie? Or are they both the same person? Maybe they're both two different personalities in the same body? It's uncertain for right now. But either way, regardless of whatever name this character goes by, it's now our mission to hunt them down. In order to hunt down Japhet, you have to return to the library and keep climbing higher than you did previously. You'll find a bunch of new books. The pages seem out of order, but they're actually in chronological order. The numbers are just for a code that you need to access the final part of the library. The code can be admittedly confusing to figure out. It took me a few attempts to get it, but thankfully I did end up getting it. Still though, this is a little bit more complicated than it looks, believe me. Each book also tells a piece of the story of Japhet, and thankfully, just like earlier, the Off Fandom Wiki was kind enough to transcribe the full story. And, drawing from the last of his waning forces, he created the library, more beautiful even than it had ever been before. As its heights pierced the clouds of smoke in the sky, he took his place. He had done everything for them, like the most benevolent of guardians. He had given them peace, security, and several means of having fun. Such was the greatness of his generosity. For a while, all was well for all, and they enjoyed the land that had been created for them with a most childish innocence. They were running through the streets, amazed by so many. But the dynamics of this world soon escalated into madness. They started to forget their joys, descending into a spiral of fear and mindless worries. As for the Firebird, he wept on his lonesome throne, saddened by the oblivion into which his subjects had made him fall. They now had time for naught but their own worries. And so, the Firebird became a cat, and the cat became a tyrant. Led by his wrath and sadness, he let a gale of ominous spirits rain upon his subjects. His madness blinded him. And as the Spectres were destroying the world for him that he himself created, he sought refuge at the summit of his most wonderful creation, the great library of Bismarck. There remained naught but to await the Purifier, the man who would rise up to destroy him, for at the bottom of his soul he knew what he had done was evil. And so, the full story is revealed. Japhet became the cat we see now. You might be confused as to how such a thing is even possible, but during the confrontation with him at the roof, you get to see exactly how it happened. And so the truth is finally revealed. This really was Japhet all along. He never stopped being a bird. The judge's brother, Valerie, tried to eat Japhet for whatever reason, yet he failed, and so Japhet ended up taking over Valerie from the inside until Valerie perished. This entire time, Japhet was inside of Valerie's body, using it as a grotesque puppet. The judge is understandably stricken by grief and sadness for his brother, who he just learned passed away after failing to chew through a bird. The batter, on the other hand, in his usual fashion, is completely unfazed by this, only focusing on his mission to purify Japhet. And I'm aware that up to this point the batter has been stoic through basically everything, but you would think something like this would faze him, surely. Yet, he's completely uncaring and apathetic towards it, only caring about his mission. And so, the rematch with Japhet begins. He tries justifying his actions by likening himself to a father punishing disrespectful children, yet there's a hint of sadness to what he's saying. It's like he knows just how wrong his actions were, and he regrets it. Even though he tries to pretend otherwise, that he was justified, deep down, he wishes he hadn't done what he did. At first, the rematch plays out in a very similar fashion to the fight with him earlier, but as the fight goes on, Japhet begins to emerge out of Valerie's carcass more and more until this happens. And so, the real boss fight begins against Japhet in his true form, the Millennial Firebird and Lord of the Second Zone. The fight plays out in a similar way to Deden's fight, however the speed gimmick only really applies to Japhet himself, and in addition to that, nearly all of Japhet's attacks specialize in inflicting some sort of status effect, whether it be a muted status effect or poison. Muted in particular is something you'll have to worry about because it stops a party member from using their competences. Aside from that, I don't really know how to describe it other than this fight feels like it has so much strategy you've got to put into it. It feels distinct in a way that a lot of other bosses don't really manage to do in this game. Japhet's design is also just awesome, I'm sorry. From a narrative perspective too, this fight is so much better than a lot of the other bosses. Unlike Dead End, where we were only really left to speculate about his backstory, we got to learn Japhet's full backstory. Japhet has so much more depth to him than a lot of other characters too. He's done evil things to his own people, yet he takes no joy in it. He knows deep down just how wrong his actions were, and so there's nothing left for him to do but to fight the batter at the top of the library. Overall, the fight against Japhet is my personal favorite in the entire game, and I doubt that's going to change anytime soon. Gameplay-wise, it's probably the best fight in the game, and in addition to that, narratively, it's pretty much perfect. Interestingly, just like Dead End, Japhet also has significant parallels to the batter. In this case, it's the justification. The batter by this point has done seriously questionable things, perhaps the biggest of which being the purification of Deaden. Yet the batter tried to justify it, saying that Deaden was, quote, the pest that eats away at this land. And in a much similar fashion, Japhet unleashed the specters on his own subjects to, quote, teach them a lesson. And yet he tried to justify it by likening himself to a father punishing disobedient children. The comparisons are a little different, sure, but the core idea remains the same. Two characters doing seriously morally questionable things, yet trying to justify it in their own ways, trying to make themselves seem like the saviors of the situation. The entire fight against Japhet also serves as a turning point in the story, this time involving the judge, because unlike before, the judge gets a direct front row seat as to what the purification process really looks like. And so, Japhet is defeated and Zone 2 has been purified. We then get another cutscene with the little boy in the same red room we saw earlier. This time, the little boy says that the bird apparently left too. Zone 3 is unlocked, but you might be tempted to maybe revisit one of the two zones you purified already just to see if there's anything that's changed. And in doing so, you get perhaps one of the biggest confrontations as to the true nature of your mission in the game. Zone 1, now that it's been purified, is empty. All of the signs just have question marks. The tramway no longer works. All of the color is gone. And perhaps to add insult to injury, there's no NPCs anywhere in sight. The bustling zone filled with workstations is now devoid of life entirely, save for one type of enemy that keeps randomly appearing: secretaries. By this point, it was just implied that something is wrong with this mission. But here, this is actively confirming that something is not right. If this purification was really saving each zone, why is Zone 1 so lifeless now? Why did all the color vanish? Why is it so dead? The illusion of this just being an ordinary mission meant for the betterment of the world has completely collapsed with this reveal. There's no escaping the notion now that something is not right. Are we really the hero of this story? Because by now, the batter no longer really seems like a good guy. All of this will be further elaborated on in the next zone, the one with the fifth artificial element.